With the new film cleaning up at the box office, it's time to go back and look at the 1993 version of Super Mario Bros. And who knows, maybe Dinosaur chewing all of the scenery and a dinosaur-evolved dystopia is exactly the kind of crazy that's worth another watch. Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
They say you never forget the first time you're kissed by a lizard.
Perfect. This is a movie podcast, and we are in the midst of video game adaptation season. Last week we did the new Super Mario Bros. Animated movie, although we're recording this way in advance, so we have no idea what we thought about that. So
I hated it. It was the best worst.
But we have promised you the 1993 Super Mario Bros. Movie. So that is what we are here today to discuss in depth. It's a movie I've seen many times. I saw it a lot as a kid. I saw it many times before I'd ever even played a Mario game. And David, on the other hand, saw it once like 20 years ago.
Yeah, more or less. I will say, for the sake of disclosure here, I am a Nintendo kid. I had all the Nintendo consoles growing up, and I really remember wanting to like this movie going into it and being very disappointed. I couldn't put into words at the time why I was disappointed, but that's what the next hour plus minutes is going to be.
Life will find a way.
Yeah.
It's so funny watching this and realizing this came out the same year as Jurassic Park with all of its dinosaur things in it. It's just kind of funny.
Yeah, I have to imagine that might have been something of like a couple of execs talking to each other and like, oh, you hear what Spielberg's doing down the street?
Yeah. They knew because they all talk. They know what's coming out. There must have been some, I don't know, some strategic shifting. Yeah, so we'll get into it. I mean, I guess we'll start spoiler free. Not that I think anyone cares, but still, we'll stick to our structure. We'll do the spoiler free stuff, and then we'll go through the plot as we normally do. Okay. You know, so many things to discuss with this 1993 movie.
So densely packed with symbolic imagery and references to the video game that don't just completely fall flat. I loved it so much.
Actually, hold on. I'm going to Google something very quickly.
Okay.
Just very quickly. I mean, just to
fill the gap.
Fill the gap.
I think.
Yeah. Like, how do you feel watching this again? Is it? What was the experience like?
Okay, so the very first thing in this movie is the original theme song from the video games, the overworld theme 1-1 playing. And that is the last time that it gets close to the video game. Mm-hmm. And as someone, like I said, my very first game console, because I was born in 93, but my very first game console was an original NES, and I had the combo Super Mario Bros. Duck Hunt cartridge. So I literally grew up with this game. And so it holds a little bit of a soft spot in my heart. 2 weeks ago, we talked about Street Fighter, and I claimed how the producers, the directors, the writers, at least seemed to try to appeal to the video game audience, the people who were coming there to see that. I don't think that these people even considered that it was a video game. I think they 100% saw the IP and said, okay, we're going to make a movie completely divorced from the idea of the video game. And this is what we've ended up with.
I will say, I will say this, though.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This duo, this directing duo, unlike a lot of future video game movies, I will say this about this one. They had a vision.
Oh, yeah.
This is not just some phoned-in movie. They are just going through the motions. They had some vision for some sort of cyberpunk-style dystopia, alternate universe story that just happens to be shaped around some of the ideas of Mario. Well, and I should say the ideas, some of the names from Mario.
Yeah. I will say, you know, I always do a little bit of research into these movies after the fact, get a little bit of backstory on what happened. And this movie did go through the thing of they gave it to these directors who had a vision. And when the scripts came in, everyone loved it because it was a very like adult take. Apparently, one comparison was to Mad Max.
I believe like there was an original cut that's never seen the light of day. You know, maybe one day we'll get to see it, but I believe there was an original cut that was like an R-rated, grittier like movie that was less kid friendly.
But then the executives were like, "Wait a minute, our target audience is 8-year-olds. Can we throw in more sound effects and funny stuffs?"
And there's definitely a little bit like there's a little bit of S&M stuff that just sort of is seeping in the just the periphery of the movie. You know, at one point there's literally just like a foot with a high heel on a shoulder coming in from out of frame, and I'm like, what is this weird kinky shit? What's happening?
See, the part that gets me is that the executives are sitting down. They're like, okay, we need to make this movie appeal to kids. Let's add in a few things. And then someone stepped forward and said, hey, should we maybe take out the fact that the entire plot is about the resource management of this government and how it's crippling its society? And they said, nah, kids will get that.
So the thing I wanted to look up is I wanted to just read the entire opening narration, because I think the opening narration of this movie is special and sets you up. Now, I'm going to read this out. I want you to imagine this in a thick Brooklyn accent, right?
With animated dinosaurs on screen.
With animated dinosaurs on screen. A long time... Sorry, I've already messed up. A long, long time ago, the Earth was ruled by dinosaurs. They were big, so not a lot of people went around hassling them. Actually, no people went around hassling them because there were no people yet. Just the first tiny mammals. Basically, life was good. Then something happened. A giant meteorite struck the Earth. Goodbye, dinosaurs! But what if the dinosaurs were all destroyed? What if the impact of the meteor that created the parallel dimension, where the dinosaurs continued to thrive and evolve into intelligent, vicious, and aggressive beings, just like us? And hey, what if they found a way back? So what I love about this narration is right away you get this thick accent doing this, and it sounds kind of weird to have that accent just talking about dinosaurs in this way. But I love that the entire premise of this movie is basically just this pivot point in this paragraph where the voice just says, but what if the dinosaurs weren't destroyed? And what if there was a parallel dimension? That's the pitch. That's the entire pitch of the movie.
I mean, yes, it is. But I especially love it because it sounds like when I'm talking to like my 6-year-old cousin, we're playing a game or something, and I'm like, oh, I shot you. And they're like, but what if I had a shield that did this? I'm like, well, then everything would be different. That's good job. You did it.
Yeah, it's the way he speeds up as he's listing the intelligent, vicious, aggressive beings. Like, he speeds up in this way. It just feels like, oh god, what am I reading here? I just need to do this quickly so I can leave this sound booth and never think about this ever again.
What gets me is that there is listings on the trivia here that say that, the original cut of the film did not have this segment. This segment was not here. Oh. But then by the time they got into the plot, the audience was like, I'm sorry, what happened to the dinosaurs? I can't understand what's even going on. So they needed a little intro here of like, okay, parallel dimensions. As if that clears anything up.
I kind of love this movie. I'm not gonna lie.
I don't hate this movie because of what the movie is. I hate the movie because of what the movie is associated with, and how I cannot get those two things to coexist.
That is fair. And I'm not even saying it's good, right? Let me make it clear. It is a weird, wacky movie with lots of weird shit in it, but it's so just potently this weird creative vision from these two directors that I can't help but like appreciate for what it is. And I think it's so fascinating that I think when you think of video game movies and you think of early video game movies, there's three big examples. It's Super Mario Brothers, it's Street Fighter, and it's Mortal Kombat. And they came out 1 year after each other. 93, 94, 95.
Yep.
Boom, boom, boom. And, they got these things out relatively quickly. I want to say the third Super Mario Brothers was kind of like...
No, this definitely was at least post Super Mario World.
Okay, fair enough. My timeline's a bit off there. But... yeah, like, so they got this out relative quick. Maybe not as quick as like because Street Fighter was like super new when Street Fighter 2 came out, but they were pumping these things out. There was this like almost like gold rush to go and make some video game movies, and they all flopped. They were all critical failures. They were all.
Yep.
And the funny thing is that I feel like if you watch a lot of video game movies, and we've kind of cherry picked here, and some of the truly bad ones we won't get to until another video game season. But if you watch stuff from the 2000s and the 2010s as far as video game adaptations go, I think you look back at those three examples and you go, you know what? They had a lot more going for them than some of these later things did.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the thing. At least between Street Fighter and Super Mario Brothers, I can't speak to Mortal Kombat exactly, but
one day.
Yes, one day. But between the pair of them, the directors did go in and actually have a vision. They went in and they were like, hey, we are doing a story. And the story may or may not align with the story of the video game, but at least we are telling a full-fledged story here. Where I think once you hit like the mid-2000s, when there was that low-grade video game movie boom, it just kind of is the same story over and over again of, something bad happened to the protagonist and you'll see some familiar faces along the way.
Yeah. And just bland, I think, is the other, you know, the important word.
Except for the Resident Evil series, that was art.
Piss off. I'm not going to listen to this slander. So, no, we have to talk about, you know, the choice they've made with, like, some of the characters they're including. I think the big one that sticks out to me is that they've got Daisy and not Peach. When I feel like Peach is the one that most people think of when they think of the, you know, the female lead who needs to be rescued by the brothers. Like, that's who you think of. Daisy, I understand, was from the Game Boy game or something. Like,
yeah, so there was Super Mario Land for the Game Boy, and she was the princess of, I want to say it was called, like, Sarasota Land or something like that. I genuinely couldn't tell you why they chose Daisy for this over Peach, except for they wanted the princess to be the love interest of Luigi, and Peach was always the love interest of Mario. That's the only thing I could think of.
And they didn't want to upset the fans, should be upset that they're swapping. Okay, all right. Given all the other things they're not doing from the game, that's quite shocking. But...
Exactly. That's the one thing that they didn't want to upset the fans with. Every other thing, fair game.
Okay. Obviously, we'll talk about the casting. We have Bob Hoskins as Mario. We have John. We have John Leguizamo as Luigi. And let's get out of the way. These are supposed to be Italian brothers, and we have a Englishman.
Yeah.
And a Latino playing the two Italian brothers.
I want to throw out an alternate universe here, a different timeline.
Yes.
A parallel dimension. Apparently, trivia says that the original person they were looking at to play Luigi was Tom Hanks.
Well.
But because he just had 2 bombs of movies with Turner and Hooch and some other one I don't even remember, and so they thought that maybe the Tom Hanks train was over.
Well, that's funny in hindsight because because Tom Hanks, he's not a movie star anymore. He disappeared. Whereas Leguizamo here, he's I mean, he is actually in stuff, to be fair, but he's not a star.
Yeah,
he's not a lead role or anything like that.
No, he's one of the hardest working supporting actors I've seen.
Yeah, he was in The Menu just recently. Obviously, he was in a couple of John Wick films that we just did. You know, so he's getting around. He's doing stuff. Yeah. So I will say that at least visually, I kind of get it. Like, you know, like Bob Hoskins, once you put the mustache on him and you put the hat on him, I'm like, you know what? He's very Mario shaped. I get the visually what they were going for here, even if it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
The fact that this came out before Mario had any voice acting at all, save for, I think it was the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, the animated one, where he does have a very gruff Italian accent. I get why they did Bob Hoskins. It fit perfectly with what Mario was at that point, but comparing it to Mario today, of this very lighthearted, jovial guy, seeing Bob Hoskins get frustrated that they're like out of work and that their van's breaking down, I'm like, that's not Mario. What's going on?
It's my Mario, damn it.
Yeah, pretty much.
So the big thing, and this is the other weird comparison with Street Fighter actually, is that they both have like like a known great actor playing the super villain, right? We have Dennis Hopper playing Koopa. Although he has kind of like an interesting mix of he's kind of guilty of, we did the Patreon bonus episode for this month was Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li. And one of the complaints we had is that the version of Bison in that movie is just a guy in a business suit. This Koopa is like kind of virgin in that. He's got a very shiny suit. It's very glittery looking, but he is just kind of a guy in a suit with kind of like a weird haircut that's meant to look like scales.
I mean, that's my complaint with the entirety of that plot. Is that every enemy in the games is based off of either turtles or mushrooms. And somehow they decided to go with dinosaurs. And I don't get it.
Because Yoshi.
But, like, why? Yes, okay, Yoshi's a dinosaur, but can he not just exist in this world of turtles and mushrooms? I don't understand.
We'll get to all that stuff. Dennis Hopper is pretty entertaining, though. Like, I will say, Raul Julia in Street Fighter is more entertaining, but I do think Dennis Hopper has some like interesting little quirks in his performance in this. There's one point where he's just walking down the hallway with two Goombas, and he's just kind of got his hands out like this as he's swaying from side to side as he's walking.
Yeah.
And he just looks like, you know what, he's doing some sort of like as far as I know, John and Bob were drunk for most of the shooting of this movie.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Dennis Hopper, well, I know he had his own problems with that kind of thing just in his life in general. I feel like he actually he's passionate. He cares about this role. He's doing it.
I guarantee you that they told him the backstory of King Koopa, in this universe. Yes. And they were like, all right, you are a king of a dinosaur people. You were evolved from a Tyrannosaurus. And that's why he's walking around with the arms like this. Because T-Rex had the tiny little arms that walked around like that. He made that choice.
Yeah.
No one told him to do that. He got into the character deep enough. He's like, if I came from a T-Rex, I'd walk around like this all the time.
And I'm not saying he necessarily cared about the movie or thought it was good, but he still gave it his all. He still gave it his, like, he didn't phone it in, is what I'm trying to say.
Of course not.
And he didn't phone in Waterworld just a couple of years later. You know, he's a man who was committed to his roles. Actually, a little interesting thing I noticed is that because obviously when they're in Koopa City or whatever we're calling it, there's like, you know, campaign posts and propaganda because you know, he's like this dictator ruler who pretends that there's an election but not really. One of the posters, he's got like a chainsaw, so I'm like, this is a sly little reference to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which stars Dennis Hopper, and he has a chainsaw fight with Leatherface, so there's actually a reference in this to the second Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I can't say I expected it to be here, but okay. Why not?
I love that the directors of this like, let's make a Texas Chainsaw reference. We don't care about the video game, but Texas Chainsaw, we want to make sure we reference that.
I feel like there was a point in this movie somewhere in pre-production where they realized that nobody was going to be happy. And so everyone just kind of just dicked around and tried to do whatever they wanted to do.
Yeah, so we have Samantha Mathis as Daisy, who I know from Broken Arrow. I know from this first, to be honest, but I've seen her in Broken Arrow as well. Okay. I don't know what she's been doing since the 90s, but she's been on TV shows, I think, or something. Yeah, she's
done all the rounds on all the different medical dramas and cop procedurals and blah, blah, blah.
We have two sort of like idiot henchmen for Koopa who are doing henchman-like jobs, played by Fisher Stevens and Richard Edson. Fisher Stevens I have seen in other things over the years. He kind of pops up in like bit roles here or there.
Yeah. It looks like he really hit it big in the 80s, but
yeah. I think he's in Short Circuit, I want to say. In fact, he might be the one who's played an Indian character in Short Circuit.
He's Ben Jabatuya.
Yeah, some problematic elements to one of his other roles, but so you've got that. You got, I mean, other than that, there's not. There's Lena, who's like the evil sort of like Koopa mistress or whatever. I don't know what you want to call her.
Like this, that was the part that threw me the biggest for the loop, because out of all the other characters that we've listed, they at least have some parallel to the video game. There's nothing for Lena. Lena's just Lena.
She's just a movie creation.
Yeah.
What's so funny is maybe it was like a subconscious memory, right? and it wasn't this viewing because I've seen this a few times as an adult. But in one of my previous viewings, when they introduced this character, this sort of like, you know, rounder woman who like punches Mario and steals the necklace, and she's wearing this like red thing with spikes, right?
Yeah.
In my head, I just called her Big Bertha because it felt like it fit. Only to discover later on that she is in fact called Big Bertha. And I don't know if I just like hit a jackpot with my thought process or if I somehow in my conscious somewhere knew this from my childhood.
I did that like 3 times in this movie. Like I was sitting there. You can ask my girlfriend who watched it with me. I sat there and
ex-girlfriend now.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, this movie tore us apart. But no, I sat there and, you know, it's about 2/3 of the way through the movie. No real spoilers, but I said, you know what's pissing me off most about this movie? They're not in their costumes. And within 10 seconds of me saying that out loud, they got into the costumes. And I'm like, all right, keep going, movie. You got me.
You got to build to the costumes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I won't say who he's playing because that's a spoiler, but there is a very small cameo by Lance Henriksen.
Which, okay, I have to imagine he was on set for something completely different.
I was happy to see him. So,
oh yeah, no, for sure.
It was a pleasant. That's one of those things where, you know, I hadn't seen it for a long time between the ages of 10 and like maybe 24 or something like that. And when I saw it again around my mid-20s, I went, wait a minute, that's Lance Henriksen at the end. Yep. You know, what the hell? So yeah, we'll get into who he's playing and all that stuff in spoilers. But I mean, other than that, you've just got this weird cyberpunk dystopia world that is the alternate dimension they go into, which seems to be inspired partly by Blade Runner, partly by other things. I don't even know.
Yeah, it's got like a Dark City sort of vibe to it. It's like there is no good comparison because it's somehow taking all the adult elements of things like Blade Runner and those sort of dystopian movies and then somehow making it like PG-13 friendly. If not even just PG friendly.
But also having like wackier, like all the cars have like these like power like connectors at the top that are really tall. They just spark all over the place.
In fairness, I really liked the world building they did for the cars and because the entire point of it was that dinosaurs never died in this world, so therefore there's not oil deposits. And so they have to have something else to get their system running off of, and they managed to make it work off of electricity instead. I like the thought process that goes into that. I just don't understand why it's in a Mario movie.
There's another thing I liked about the cars as well, actually. I like that they don't have brakes, and like Mario even says that at one point. And you actually see when they're arriving at the police station earlier in the film that to stop the car when it's going fast, they have like it's like when a jet lands on like an aircraft carrier and they have the cable that sort of stops it. They have like that sort of like barricade system to like stop the cars. That's how they brake.
I will say, yes, I like that as well because it makes, I'm assuming, some amount of sense in the world they built. However, at one point in this movie, we come across a bomb scene and a car does brake for the bomb. Like he slams on the brakes and he stops.
It's not a police car though. It's just a cab or something like that.
Why can't the police cars have what cabs have?
Don't ask too many questions.
That's all I was doing in this movie. I was sitting. There's so many question marks on my notes.
Oh dear. It's wild. One thing I think we do have to address is something that's not aged well, and it's not the movie's fault because they couldn't have known. But Koopa's lair is that world's version of the World Trade Center, and like one of the towers is like damaged, and at one point in the movie it does like it kind of relates them to the World Trade Center, and it's sort of like it's a really kind of like, oh, that's, you know, that feels bad now, and it's not their fault. They couldn't have known, obviously.
Oh no, of course not. But that's just every time that anything happens to the World Trade Centers in any movies, you're just like, oh, guys.
Yeah. So you know, I'm just getting out of the way, just bringing it up. I mean, we'll talk about the scene that is more prominent in when we get there, but
I mean, I guess staying in spoiler free, how did you feel about those effects? Like, particularly the CGI ones? I mean, because they did a lot of practical. but
yeah,
the CGI.
they use a lot of practical. I appreciate the sets for the main city street, and I appreciate all the weird cars that they added all the bits onto to make them look, otherworldly. I think the CG obviously is pretty rough. Like, it's 1993 CG.
I think it's rough, but I think they understood that and they kept it as sparingly as possible.
Yeah, there's like one big moment towards the end where it's like it's hard to sort of get around just how kind of shit it looks.
Yeah.
And I think there's like one city skyline shot where it kind of like the camera comes into like the window that Daisy's on at one point, and that looks quite rough.
Yeah.
Other than that, honestly, yeah, like it's mostly serviceable for the purpose it plays. But most of it is, the Goombas are, suits with like, I don't even know if they count as prosthetic heads but
I mean, the part that got me the most, if we're just going to bring up the Goombas, is that they're not Goombas. It's literally a mushroom enemy, and they've managed to turn it into a giant hulking behemoth of a dinosaur enemy. So
yeah, like they're known for being small, and this is now they're like 7 foot tall. It's a weird choice.
I kept on waiting in this movie for a scene where Mario like somehow gets on top of one of them and like just like steps on it to get rid of it, because that would be the most basic reference you could make. But no,
he does go down a pipe at one point, though.
Yeah, that's it. That's congrats, you did it, movie.
Oh dear, gives me a chuckle. So, yeah, that's the cast. That's the broad feelings on the effects and the world.
The only other thing I really have noted here for spoiler free is Alan Silvestri did the score, and this is not his most notable score.
It is not, but at the same time, there's that main kind of like, I don't even know what you call it, because the main theme is this sort of like happy. It almost looks like a sitcom theme song that plays. It's like a. Joe, actually, I remember bringing this up when I did on the Atomic Cinema Experiment, their sci-fi movie podcast that I did with Tara. Go check it out. We did Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and I noted in that movie that the main theme in that I just realized it's very reminiscent, or this is reminiscent of that, I should say, because this came later.
Okay.
Of the score in this, like there's like a theme in that, but it fits in that case like a family comedy, so it kind of it feels like it fits. Whereas here they're driving around their truck in Brooklyn looking for plumbing jobs, and it's like it's
so hijinksy.
Yeah, very hijinksy. It's I'll give it this. It's memorable, but yeah, is it the Back to the Future score that Silvestri also did? No, absolutely not. That's an all-timer.
I mean, that's the thing, is like I was waiting for the Mario theme, but Alan Silvestri's version of
sure,
it.
And
I don't feel like I ever got that. I don't feel like if you play the entire soundtrack of this movie, just randomized and said, okay, which one's the main theme? I'd be like, I
am pretty sure that last week when we did the new one, that there'll be an orchestral epic version of the theme in that.
No, I guarantee you that the last song that plays in the credits is going to be the original 8-bit version.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's what also plays at the start when the logos are playing.
That too.
But yeah, even though the clips and trailers they put out of the new one like already have like 5 music cues from like different levels of the game, to the point where they're almost overdoing it. It's like, calm down, guys. Like you can save some of these for sequels.
I need my Rainbow Road theme. God damn it.
Yeah. But that's true. We got a car chase in this. That's kind of their Mario Kart section.
Is it? Especially because when did Mario Kart even come out? I don't think it was even a thing at this point.
I don't know, when did Mario Kart come out? I just assumed it was already a thing.
Super Mario Kart, the very first one. Nope, 92. All right, so it was out. I will give you that.
Game, set, and match, baby. Honestly, the most unrealistic thing about this movie is that they don't go to save Daisy, and then they go, oh shit, she's in a different castle. Like...
That was in at least one version of the script. I did read that.
Really?
They did at one point have a character be like, "Oh, your princess is in a different castle."
All I could think was like, Koopa's thing is 2 towers. Like, just say she's in the other one. Like, have them go to the wrong one first, and just have someone say, "Hey, she's not in this tower. She's in the other one."
I mean, everything everything that you're saying, I would love. I'd love all these little nods. I'd love all these little winks. But unlike the Street Fighter movie, this movie had no interest in nodding or winking. In fact, all of the references to characters in the game, outside of the ones that are, speaking lines, are just names of restaurants and clubs and stuff in the background. It's like, oh, look, there's Thwomps. And it feels like the most surface level, hey, yeah, see, we are paying attention to you, but in the most just demeaning way.
I mean, don't get me wrong, this was a problem with adaptations, and it still can be, where they just make a movie or a TV show, and it's like, as long as we put in like some Easter eggs that reference the, this is the thing I hated about the Resident Evil movies, is that
right.
It wasn't an adaptation of Resident Evil, it was just another zombie movie that used some of the monsters, was mostly new characters, and we threw you a bone because the character from the first game is, she's got like a small role in the third movie or whatever, like there was a lot of things like that where it's just like, hey, we're giving you a little, like, no, they should be the hero. Every time a character from the game shows up in a Resident Evil movie, it's to make Alice, the character who was not in the games, look better because she has to save them, like over and over again. That's what happened.
I mean, you're right, and it's amazing they turned it into such high art. But
Shut up.
I think what gets me about this one is there has been so much development of all of the Mario characters, but I think all of that's happened within my lifetime. It's the N64 games, it's the GameCube games where voice acting really started being used in video games. At this point, I think I just need to keep in mind all they had were the NES games, a couple of Game Boy games, and Super Mario World, and that's it. They didn't have a defined character for any of these. The one thing that everyone can say about Luigi is that he is cowardly. He is scared a lot. John Leguizamo is just rushing into danger constantly in this movie. But it's a thing. It's a thing that was developed after that.
Yeah. Because if anything in this movie, Mario was the more nervous one, and Luigi's saying, "No, you got to have faith, just leave."
Yeah.
But like you say, that characteristic for Luigi came after. I mean, if anything, like Luigi's Mansion probably really catapulted it.
Yeah.
If it wasn't already like a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, it was a few things in like the sports games and stuff like that. But yeah, Luigi's Mansion is pretty much the number one spot for developing Luigi as a character.
Yeah. So. I don't know, it's just weird. I mean, I will say, like, Luigi should have had a mustache as well. It's weird that he doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, I think the part that got me the most is, like, what's the age gap on Leguizamo and Hoskins? Because they're supposed to be brothers. They say that numerous times, but it feels like there is at least a 20-year age gap.
I think so, because at one point he says that Mario raised them, because the parents were gone already. So,
right.
So clearly, yeah, he was at least in his late teens by the time.
And it just feels a bit too father-son rather than brothers to me. I honestly think it could have been fixed if they did give Leguizamo a mustache, because that would just age him up ever so slightly more.
Someone do the opposite of the Justice League theatrical cut. Someone go in the
mustache cut.
Add in the mustache.
I would love that. Are you kidding me?
To be fair, it'd probably look much better because it's easier to add the mustache than it is to take it away.
That's just a Snapchat filter. You just hold that up to the screen. It would just do it.
Yeah, the AI will just deal with it. You don't have to even worry about it. So, yeah, I guess with all that said, we'll get into spoilers. So, full spoilers for Super Mario Brothers if you're at all concerned.
As much as one event can actually follow from another in this movie.
It mostly makes sense. We get the backstory with Daisy being dropped off at an orphanage by her mother.
And she's trapped in what I can only describe as like a Stargate holding for an egg.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This is all just cool with you? You were just good with this intro?
Well, they've evolved from dinosaurs, so they still get hatched.
I was more so concerned on how the nuns just fully accepted this human baby came from an egg and never brought it up again.
They just probably thought it was like an immaculate conception. This was like, this was God delivered this baby to them.
Yeah. In a magic space egg, sure.
Yeah. There was no uterus, so we had to have an egg.
I mean, when you really get down to the biology, everything comes from eggs, just not hard-shelled eggs.
True. Yes, that's true. Yes, there's still eggs inside mammals, of course. Yes. Yes. So we see younger Koopa like sort of kill or inadvertently kill her mother, and like the debris falls down, and it closes the portal that there is to this other world. Dinosaur World, they seem to know about. At the very least, it's a myth to most people. Koopa obviously knows about our dimension, and that's his whole goal. Is he wants to get back to it, and now that it's been reopened, which we find out is because the corrupt business or politician, the Scapelli dude, who also owns a plumbing company, because they were blasting down in the sewers, which led to this dig site of dinosaur bones being dug up, which is what Samantha Mathis is doing. Daisy's down there. She's like a very young archaeologist. She does say she's with the university at least, though, so you presume that she's like a post-grad student or something. She's not like the old professor character.
Yeah, she's not she's definitely someone just getting their degree in ancient, because obviously she came from dinosaurs, and it's just subtly calling to her, even if she doesn't know why.
Yes, this is the equivalent of like Superman looking up at the stars and thinking about Krypton.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
So we get that established. We also get, like, Scapelli's a bit of a like for a movie that is aimed at kids. It is a bit odd that he's very pervy, because there's one scene. Scapelli's not in a lot of the movie, but there's one scene where they come down and they say, "Hey, hurry up with this dig! You're in our our work site. We want to get back to.
We gotta build this parking garage or whatever."
He's that type of evil businessman, and he's like, there's a lot of young women being going missing in Brooklyn these days. You might want to be careful. You're so pretty. And what gets me is the smile that he has after he says it. That it's like a used car salesman. Like,
see, you were saying pervy. I feel like, yes, he was coming off weird, but I took it more homicidal, because he's like, a lot of women going missing. Wouldn't want you to be next.
That is fair. That is fair. Well, that's the thing. We get introduced to Spike and Iggy, and they're basically the reason why there's been a lot of women going missing is because they can't tell mammal women apart, and because we see them that they're looking at women looking for Daisy, and one of the lines is literally, "Well, she has a head, 2 arms, and 2 legs," which I thought was a weird line, because once you see their world, like, well, all of your women have 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head as well. Like, this is not unique to our dimension, so why are you so confused?
I just mildly jumping ahead here. I think what gets me the most about this is there's some aspects of their dino world that are so well thought out. Like, they clearly took some of these conclusions of, okay, this world was splintered off 65 million years ago. How would it evolve differently? And they thought it through down to the smallest detail. But then there are other aspects where they're like, and then I guess this other thing happens. This is one of those things where it's like, okay, both worlds have humanoid looking things, and it just happens that one of them came from monkeys and the other came from lizards. I'm okay with that. But then you get those moments where Iggy's unable to tell them apart. It's like, well, you're the same. It's literally the same on the other side.
They're also supposed to be really, really stupid. So, I mean, maybe that's fair. That's the explanation there.
Fair enough.
But I do kind of love, though, that's why there's been a string of kidnappings. It's because they just can't find the right woman they're looking for. So they just keep kidnapping more and more innocent people. That's a little amusing to me as a concept. But so
I like it right up until the last one, which I guess we'll get to.
Yeah. So obviously we're introduced to the Mario Brothers themselves, and they're struggling for money. They keep getting beat to jobs by the Scapellis. They're looking for plumbing jobs, and there's a little bit of like foreshadowing, because I don't even know what you call it, the pin thing. The pin thing. He puts it on his face, but like, it's the thing where you can put your hand into it and like the needles or all the pins will move up. And create like a shape. Oh god.
It's just that 90s toy.
Yeah, that 90s
I don't think it has a name.
Yeah. But because it actually looks very similar to the effect of like going through the portal. When Daisy comes back through the portal for a second when they're looking at her, that's what it looks like. So it's kind of like some filmmaking magic going on here. They're foreshadowing with us.
I feel like they shot that scene I mean, they had to have shot that scene before they went into post, so they were just
True.
like, "Oh, we have a general idea as to what it's going to look like."
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
means that probably was the best they could have made it look using 93 technology.
Auteurs is what I'll say. They're auteurs.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. A little bit of set design that I really want to point out here is that the Mario household has like a display rack in the living room with 3 plungers on it. Like it's like they're displaying their prize like hunting rifles, but they're plungers.
I mean, that's one of the subplots that I feel like was dropped in this movie. They every once in a while brought it up, but Mario keeps bringing up that plumbing is their family business and how, Mario's following in their father's steps, but Luigi's kind of like, I don't want to be a plumber. I want to be a real boy.
Yeah, he's apprenticing, as he points out later.
He is, but like, he also later on in the movie straight up says that he doesn't really care about plumbing that much. And it feels like it should be a larger subplot than it really ends up being.
Yeah, that's fair. I do kind of love how Mario talks about it, though. He has this kind of like sense of honor with it.
Oh, yeah.
Later on, when like the Capellis have like sabotaged like the sewers to try and ruin the dig site, and Luigi like runs up with Daisy to Mario and says, "Hey, the Scapellis, they're flooding the sewers," and he grabs his tool belt as if it's like a gun holster and says, "I'm going in." Like, he treats it like he's a. Like this is his calling. Like he's calling to be a plumber. Although my favorite thing plumber related in this movie is by far the way that Koopa and people in the Koopa world, but especially Koopa, will just sort of like refer to them as if plumbers like a race of people. Where he's like, "Get those plumbers!" Or later on when Luigi comes jumping into the scene, he just looks up and goes, "Plumber! Die, plumber!" Like he keeps referring to them as plumbers, as if that's like their defining characteristic. And I thought that's really funny.
In Koopa world, it's a racial slur.
See, it feels that way.
Yeah,
it feels that way. So yeah, we're interested in them, and they run into Daisy. It sort of sets up like that Luigi's like deeply into her because he's supposed to be calling the answering machine to see if they've got any jobs. And there is a job. There's a guy screaming on their answering machine saying, "Oh, we've got flooding here. We need a plumber. It's a big job." As if it's like a really big payday. And he just hands the phone over to Daisy because she wants to use the payphone. And then Mario's like, "Hey, was there any jobs?" And he's like,
what?
No.
I both love and hate the fact that this is by far the fastest on-screen romance I think I've ever seen in my life. Like, Luigi says less than 2 words to her before immediately he's smitten, and she's pretty much on the same boat automatically as well.
Yeah, Mario has to help it along and sort of fill in some of the conversation for him. Yeah, Mario being this smooth ladies man is certainly an interesting choice, I would say.
Again, I feel like it just goes back to the only characterization we had was the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, which I remember had a live action segment, and I forget who played Mario in that, but
would you believe it was a wrestler?
I would, mainly because you're bringing up that it's a wrestler.
Yeah, I want to say that was Lou Albano.
That's right.
Yeah, he's a wrestler. Yeah.
Yep.
We have a bit of trivia for you.
But it just, I think that's the only characterization they were really pulling from here. And the fact that Bob Hoskins is just a generally likable guy in the roles he plays. I feel like he's a gruff plumber, but he brings this atmosphere to the character of like, no, you get it. You can see the gold right underneath it.
Well, they go to an Italian restaurant for the double date.
Yes, true.
Yeah,
with his girlfriend that we all know from the video games, Daniela.
I love though that he's dressed in quite a, I would say smart like jacket, but he's definitely he's going for kind of like a early 90s yuppie kind of like vibe with how he dressed him for his dinner, and then his girlfriend Daniela's in kind of like a party dress, kind of she's like sort of a Brooklyn girl kind of thing, right? And then it cuts to Luigi and Daisy. Luigi's still sitting in his hoodie, and Daisy's just wearing what she was wearing to the dig site earlier. And I'm like, they're perfect for each other. They've both put in no effort. This is ideal.
This relationship is going to be based off of, what do you want to do tonight? Cool.
I love how Mario and Daniela try to sort of set them up to be alone. Like, hey, we can take the van back, ourselves. You two can go and do whatever. And then Luigi, the only thing he comes up with is, I'd like to walk you home. Well, she's going to have to go home, Luigi, anyway. Like,
I appreciate that Luigi at every step along the way is asking for just 100% consent on everything.
Yeah.
Like, even things that wouldn't make any sense to ask consent for. Like, he's like, oh, well, you know, we could give you a ride if you want, but if you want to stop talking, we could just stop talking too. And it's like, all right, sure.
Well, I mean, this all stems from his tactics when he's asking her out. He's like, do you eat? And she's like, yeah. Dinner? Yeah. I'm known for it. Tonight? And then that's when it clicks for her. That's when she finally gets what's. Oh, you're asking me to. Okay, all right. So he's walking her home. They end up going to the dig site instead, though, because he's so fascinated by what she does. And they're both so insecure, though, because they both basically are saying, "Oh, we're both kind of losers. I totally get if you want to just like drop this right now and don't want to pursue this." And I'm like, why are you both such downers? Like, just like you seem to be going quite well.
It's those insecurities, man. Luigi was always playing second fiddle to Mario.
Yeah, Daniela gets kidnapped by Ufus and
Iggy and
Doofus.
Spike.
Aye, well, yeah, those names, sure. They get kidnapped. She gets kidnapped by them and taken away. Meanwhile,
I love in that scene with the kidnapper. Like, they know that it's not the same girl that they just saw before, but they rationalize it that she's wearing a disguise.
They do. Yes,
like they just are. I appreciate how stupid they are written.
Yes.
In that they're at least comedically, because at a certain point they could have crossed over into frustratingly stupid, but they always managed to keep it lighthearted enough. There
was a little bit of humor to it. Yeah, like there's definitely a couple of times where I chuckle at one of the dumb things they say, here or there. So, it's not high art by any means, but yeah.
I think I remember one of their lines being like, "Oh man, we got like a 0 out of 100 chance of that happening," and they're like, "What percentage is that?" And they're like, "I don't know," and they pause for like 10 seconds.
Yes,
I don't know.
Yes, I like how when they get made smarter later on, they still bicker the exact same way. The only difference is they use slightly smarter sounding words to do it.
Oh yeah, no, they're still idiots.
Yeah.
They're just they have a bigger vocabulary.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So. Anyway, so we already mentioned, Scapelli's try and flood the dig site in the sewer system, and Mario gets brought down to try and help, and they're fixing it, and that's when these two doofuses, and it makes some sense that they're there quite quickly because this is right next to the portal, so it makes some sense. They come in, knock out Mario and Luigi, take Daisy, and they obviously Mario and Luigi run after her. They get to this portal. They don't know if they should try and jump in, but obviously Daisy sort of sticking her head out is kind of enough of a sign to be like, oh, maybe we should take a leap.
Which I guess it's worth noting. I don't think we mentioned yet the MacGuffin for the entire movie, which is around her neck. Daisy is wearing this fragment of the meteorite that broke off, and King Koopa needs it in order to reform the meteorite, which will merge the two worlds again.
Yeah, on the other side of the portal, on the Koopa side, the rest of the meteor, which is just a big ball in the ground, basically. Yeah. But this little shard was cut out of it, and that's what she's been wearing around her neck this whole time. And Luigi sort of grabs it off her neck when she's sticking her head, not intentionally, but he's just trying to like reach for her, and he ends up swiping the rock. Which, becomes our big MacGuffin that characters are chasing for, like, throughout most of the movie. The villain wants it, the sub-villain wants it, Bertha wants it. Yeah, everyone wants the rock. So, that leads us to the dystopian, futuristic kind of city that they joke, oh, is this what Manhattan looks like now? I don't know, I've not been in a few weeks. But a rough couple of weeks.
I appreciate the comedy in this. Like, I don't know how much of it was originally in the script before, like, the executives stepped in and were like, hey, could you maybe, I don't know, not do Mad Max? And I like it, though. I think it is a solid addition to the movie. Just these quick little one-liners just to keep things up. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a character who is the movie's version of Toad that is introduced.
Yep.
David's just for people who just listen to the audio version, David just sort of leaned back and discussed these
I don't want to get too deep into it, but the fact
mad.
is, there is, on this city, there is a giant fungal infection. There is a guy who is now a mushroom and is infecting this entire city. So why in the hell is this guy, Toad, also a lizard? They have established that mushroom people or mushroom entities can exist. Why is this guy still a lizard? I don't get. And what's worse is that in about 10 minutes, this Toad turns from the only Toad we know into a Goomba, which is also a mushroom creature, but whatever, I guess.
Well, that seems to be their tactic, is he's going to be the good Goomba. That's effectively what the movie does.
I
with
understand the necessity of him being there. I just question, why did we have to set it up like this? Really, all of my complaints are going to come down to, why is this a dinosaur-based world? That's what all of it is, because that's the one thing that doesn't make any goddamn sense when you're adapting the Mario Brothers, is that you have mushrooms and turtles. That's it. That makes up 95% of everything you need. And yet they went with dinosaurs.
Did you enjoy the old granny who tries to mug?
In fairness, yes, I did.
The Mario Brothers, yes.
Because I completely forgot about her, and I thought, like, oh, is she going to help them out? Like, I came into it with fresh eyes, and then she's like, oh, you need weapons to be in this town. Do you have any weapons? No, we don't. Okay, stick them up.
Although it was more of a cattle prod she had rather than a gun.
It's all electricity based.
Yeah. So yeah, they lose the rock. Big Bertha grabs it and just sort of jumps away. That's basically what happens. And the plumbers get arrested quite quickly because Spike and Iggy have told Koopa, because they go to Koopa and say, "Hey, we got her, we got the right one, we got Daisy finally." And he's like, "Oh great, where's the rock?" And they're like, "Rock? What are you talking about?
Huh?
What's this?" And he's like, "That's the reason why he wanted her. Is he wanted the rock around her neck." Why Koopa knows that she's been wearing that her whole life, I'm not sure, but because it's not just like, oh, he knows she'll have it because she had it as a child. It's no, he specifically says the line, "the rock that she wears around her neck." How would he know that?
I'm going to assume they have a magic wizard with a scrying ball that we just never met.
Okay.
It was Kamek.
Also, Koopa's kind of got like an OCD thing going where he like.
Yeah, so what I originally thought, because constantly disinfecting his hands, I thought that maybe it had to do with the fact that the rightful king, as we get to much later in the movie, is turned into a mushroom or a fungus. And I thought it was him basically making sure he didn't ever have any fungus on him, lest that king be able to like take him out. That was my thought process, but they never did 100% confirm.
I do love the idea that the fungus that's spread throughout the city, being like the old king. It's just funny, like watching this as The Last of Us is airing, that's a bit of fungal like zombie virus that's spread. I don't know. It's just.
I would have loved a sequel to this where, like, you know, the fungus is still out of control, and then it starts turning their citizens into mushroom people, and they call those toads. I would have loved that.
Yeah, I mean, hell, that's why they did the Saturday Night Live parody of like they did like Pedro Pascal's Mario, and it's like, oh, he's
Mario Kart. Yeah.
Now he's doing Mario instead. So they get taken to the police station, and they get processed. This is where they have to give their names, and we get the infamous Mario and Luigi Mario scene, which has the random woman's foot just on the guy's shoulder, you know, the cop's shoulder, as he's asking these questions. We see them get drenched in some sort of decontamination liquid. There's a scene where they think they're going to get shot, even though it's clearly just camera lenses. So that was the thing. Yeah. I always remembered this moment where there's like red laser sights and they think they're about to get shot. But as soon as they show like, the actual like devices that are meant to look like they might be guns, I'm like, no, those are just lenses. Look.
Yes, however, I think that it's one of those things where movie like prop designers kind of reuse things. I could have easily have seen that being like a ray gun or something before it took an image.
Yeah, I'm not really critiquing Mario and Luigi in the moment because they're scared to see a red dot, right? I'm more just saying that it's not, like, I don't think it ever fools the audience that it's...
Well, no, I don't believe that Mario and Luigi are about to get shot 30 minutes into the movie. That seemed a bit weird.
It would have spiced things up.
The remainder of this movie will be following Toad and his adventures as a Goomba.
So, yeah, basically they spend some time in like a jail cell, but the main next thing is that Koopa comes down pretending to be their lawyer because he wants to know where the rock is. So he very awkwardly, he doesn't keep up the charade very long because like as soon as Luigi like says, I don't know what you're talking about, he just grabs him by the nose and like starts to like throttle him, and Mario has to break it up.
I kind of appreciate that his temper and his anger just immediately broke it. Like he's like, I don't have time for this.
He's very upset, very temperamental. I kind of like, I appreciate though that when the main cop with the mustache comes out of the scene, he immediately calls him King Koopa, because part of me was thinking like, okay, surely he can pretend to Mario and Luigi because they've maybe not noticed the posters yet, but it's not like this guy's face is hidden from the public. Like the masses know who their emperor is, right? Like, you know, he's the guy.
I'm trying to imagine a world where I could be working somewhere and then Joe Biden walks in and he's like, hey, can I come in and pretend to be this thing for like 30 minutes? And I'd be like, I guess. Sure, go for it.
I'm trying to think of a funny job that he'd want to pretend to be for like 30 minutes. Yeah, sure, I will be the judge in this wet t-shirt contest. I'm not the president, not me. No,
don't mind me and my 6 armed guards following me around.
Yes, and also I will also pardon the winner from any crimes they may have on their record. But you know, that's, you know,
that's a big prize. You're gonna get a lot of people applying for that one.
Yeah, well, if he announces it in advance, though, you'll get all the lady murderers like in prison being like, oh, I need to spruce up, I need to go and try and win this wet t-shirt contest.
In actuality, it's all just a ploy to get like the FBI's top most wanted, just all in one place. Just round them up, get them out.
There you go.
Perfect.
Yeah. Oh, that's actually quite genius. I mean, okay, you let one bad person go, but you get like 9 of the other most wanted people like on the list and like get to put them on because you've got them all in one location. Yeah, that's genius. Yeah.
And I mean, in fairness, there's nothing to say he has to hold his end of the bargain up. He could just be like, no, screw you, broke the law. Bye.
It'd be a dick move, but quite right.
Yeah.
We've just worked out the ploy to like, well, at least to like get some of the worst female criminals. I don't know what you do for the men, but...
Oh, no, same thing. If you attach a prize to it like that, they're not going to care.
Who's got the best manly nips? We'll find out.
So we were talking about a movie?
Yeah, we were, yes. So, police station, yes. Basically, they escape, they fight back. They go to the de-evolution chamber first.
Yes.
Which...
So...
Is it just me, or would you just not call it the devolution chamber?
I mean, you see it's written on the walls as DEVO, so I'm assuming that is what it's supposed to be called, but maybe some of the actors had a hard time saying it.
Yeah.
My biggest problem with this is that, this society has had 65 million more years to evolve than we have.
Whoa, what do you mean more?
Okay. I guess that doesn't make... They would have evolved they had the exact same time to evolve, I guess.
Well...
But...
I don't know how... there was... Don't get me wrong. It's not like human beings existed right after the dinosaurs got wiped out. There's definitely a gap. Don't get me wrong.
Right, but they would have still had the same starting point. I get it. They had the exact same time to evolve. My issue herein lies is that they have figured out this machine that allows you to not only take any specimen and move them down the evolutionary chain, but they also have a move along the evolutionary chain feature. Why is just not everybody more evolved?
The same reason why when we can prolong life, only the filthy rich will be the ones getting it is because they're going to charge a fortune for it.
Fair enough.
Koopa coins, baby. It's all about the Koopa coins.
I actually really enjoyed the Koopa coins just because I was like, yeah, no, they use coins in that world.
Yeah.
Good job. You got one more thing right. That's 2 to 786.
That's what the old granny who mugs them says. I need those Koopa coins.
Yeah.
So yeah, good fun. But yeah, so Mario and Luigi obviously don't want to go in the evolution chamber. Toad does, and he turns into Big Goomba Toad. But they two fight back and run away, and they actually end up, for some reason, there's like a what do you even call it, like a zip line at the top of the police station. They end up like taking it, because it's not like they get like a belt and like just like makeshift one on like a cable.
Yeah.
Like, no, there's like an actual thing to hold on to that goes along the top.
This is one of those moments where I was sitting there being like, it's a bit too hijinksy, you know? Where this movie never really has an action set piece. There's no big moment where you're like, oh man, we've all been building to this. It's just a bunch of little hijinksy moments strung together over the course of the movie.
I also want to add, as they're gliding across, because they're going past all the jail cells as they're doing this, this is another key moment in the film where the main theme plays.
Okay. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just every time that I'm watching these action scenes, the hijinks music comes on and it just takes away any of the tenseness that might have been there.
Yes. The tenseness. Yes.
The
tension. The tension is the word that you would be looking for, yes.
Yep.
That sounded a bit off. But do I pull him up on it? Yes, I do.
I've learned that if I'm going to speak, I have to speak perfectly or else I'm called out for it.
Not perfectly, just not, stupid,
more perfect.
Not a stupid idiot child like
okay.
Like Eddie and Spike.
I don't think they'd use tenseness.
True. Too many syllables.
All right. So I don't even know where it goes from here because this is where my notes.
It's the car chase.
Yeah, it's the car chase, but like I have nothing more written besides car chase.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of big things that happen here. For a start, Luigi's able to work a computer because he plays video games, which I have a hard time believing that playing a Super Nintendo would lead you to use this computer system, but, whatever.
That's exactly what Super Nintendo is.
But at one point, the big set piece of it is they actually end up like driving up on top of another car that is driving in the opposite direction. So they end up having this segment where they're just sort of sitting. Like, this may not mean anything to you, but to the UK audience, it's very much like that episode of Mr. Bean when he puts his chair on top of the car, and he's just kind of.
I know, I've seen the visual. I get it.
Yeah. He's trying to drive home with all of his new paint and furniture that he's bought at the store, and to fit it into the car, he's had to put it into all the seats. So he puts his chair on top of the car and makes a pulley system to drive. It's stupid, but it's Mr. Bean, so it's fine.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit like that, where they're just on top of this car, and he's like, well, I hope the guy downstairs knows where we're going. Because lols.
But again, like, that's where it starts falling apart for me. It's just too hijinksy. Where I'm like, yeah, no, you're on top of that guy. And then it doesn't matter. They then just get off the car. They've lost no ground, and it's just continuing with the scene.
Well, I mean, they get chased, and they have to end up leaving. This is where they drive through a tunnel and end up in the desert area.
The desert.
And this is kind of there's maybe a little hint before with the bomb and the fungus, but this is the first big time where the fungus seems to like save their ass, and it's like, oh wait, it's hinting at something here. So and Luigi's kind of notices like, hey, the fungus just saved us, and Maris, that's my driving saved us. I'm like, you'd have landed to your death if you'd not been saved.
There was one point in this, and they've done it a few times by this point in the movie, where Luigi suggests something, and then Mario does the opposite. Because I guess he just doesn't trust Luigi's judgment on anything.
Yeah.
And again, it's one of those things that I feel like was an aborted story arc, where at some point in the movie, Luigi would make this decision, and Mario would be like, you're right, Luigi, let's do it. But that moment never comes.
Yeah. I'm desperately trying to think of No, it kind of like there's a moment in the final battle where Luigi's like trust the fungus, and then Mario starts using the fungus.
All right, fair.
So there's kind of a thing there.
It's so minor though.
I agree, but it is there.
Yeah.
So they're in the desert wandering about. I mean, so there's a lot more villain stuff at this point in the movie where Daisy has been like dressed up in a dress for Koopa's like pleasure. I mean, honestly, it gets kind of dark. Where not only is he like does he threaten to kiss her and does the you know the hissing
The tongue
the
thing.
tongue he says at the end of the scene, take her away. I'll use her later. Like that's like what he says. They're like, that's a pretty dark implication in your kid-friendly movie there.
Yes, and there's also the ongoing thing where Lena, we're getting a bit more from her as a character, and it's obvious that she's jealous of the attention that Daisy is getting.
Yeah, she wants to be Queen Koopa, and it seems like he keeps her around, and she's kind of like his like mistress or whatever. But now he wants the young princess. He's the old man, pervy man, wanting the young wife. So he.
Just want to throw out in this scene where he meets up with Daisy, we get our introduction of Yoshi.
That's true, yeah, the little dinosaur.
Which I have to imagine Steven Spielberg down the street said, hey, we're not going to use this one. It's off scale. Does anybody else want it? And they'll be like, ooh, we got it.
You say that like it looks anywhere near as good as the animatronics in Jurassic Park.
No, not even. Though apparently, according to trivia, it took no less than 11 puppeteers at any given time.
All that effort for this.
Yep.
All that effort. Yeah, we get that. We get also, the two goons been made smart, and they get sent into the desert, looking for the brothers, which is kind of what leads us to the next part of that plot. So they end up teaming up with the Marios because they need the rock, or Cooper will kill them, and the Marios just want Daisy back, so they sort of make a pact to like help each other. And they're like, wait a minute, they've described who's taking the rock. That sounds like Big Bertha. So they drive back to the city. They get into this nightclub where Bertha apparently works as a bouncer.
Which I do want to point out one tiny reference here that I actually did really appreciate.
Go on.
When they're driving back in the city, they steal a truck from what they call the Sniffets, who are garbage collectors or something. Mm-hmm. This was probably the closest they got visually to any character in the Mario series. Because Sniffets are basically just guys dressed in basically Squid Game outfits, but they're wearing gas masks. So that was the closest they got in this entire movie, is this throwaway character.
That's fair.
Don't know what that says.
I think I thought it was like a quarry truck, but you may be right. It may have been garbage.
I don't know. I assume a city this size has a lot of garbage, and they don't have any reason to just not dump it out in the desert. So
yeah, it's actually very Judge Dredd that they've got this like dystopian city, but then surrounded by just absolute wasteland. But yeah, so Mario and Luigi get into their signature colors of red and yellow, and their fancy like suits for this dancing.
They could have very easily at this point have at least gotten the colors right, but for some reason.
Well, to be fair, they're building up to the actual suits later on, which is I think is fine, right?
Yeah, I mean, fine. I get it, but I think that you give it that gradual build, instead of a complete opposite direction. The fact that Luigi's in red will never not be wrong,
and Mario's in yellow, like everyone remembers from the video game.
I mean, in fairness, I think that Bob Hoskins could play a pretty good Wario. If you really wanted to.
Like that should be the sequel. It should be Wario and Waluigi, like the arch nemesis. Like the idea that it's an alternate dimension, but they've got counterparts on this. This city.
There you go.
There you go. That's what you did with that. So did you like the use of music in this scene?
Is this the get on the floor, everybody walk the dinosaur scene? Yes, I did enjoy this use of music, mainly because I completely forgot that this was where it came from. And the verses themselves are not that recognizable, but then it hit the chorus and I was like, oh my God, it's Walk the Dinosaur. Fantastic.
It's a bit on the nose, but it does make me chuckle.
I remember that when, I think it was Ice Age 3 was coming out, they redid that song for the soundtrack of that, and I was like, that's such a strange song, I wonder where it came from. And then I find out, the Mario movie. I'm even more confused now. Yeah,
Mario has to seduce Big Bertha, which he does by saying, oh, that punch was great, I'd love for you to punch me again. That makes her want to dance with him. and he spends the entire dance trying to like either pull the rock away with his mouth or untie it with his hand as they're dancing. It's very, very slick, very slick. They don't get very far though because Lena shows up with some goons and she ends up with the rock.
Which, can I just, at this moment, Mario has to sneak away from Bertha. And I just love how absolutely heartbroken Bertha actually is. They spend like a full 10 seconds of her just looking around the dance floor desperately, sadly looking for Mario. It's like, oh, I didn't realize we got so developed in that single scene.
Well, she comes and helps them escape in a minute. She gives them the boots, the jump, which I think is the one thing I feel like there's an intentional choice to try and feel like the video game where, okay, the game's all about jumping. Let's give them a mechanic where they actually do a bit of like big jumps, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what they do with that. So they get away with the boots. Lena's got the rock, although she doesn't tell Koopa, interestingly.
No.
She keeps it for herself.
This is some regular Game of Thrones level writing here.
I don't know where it fits around here, but it's around this part where Koopa orders his pizza, and I just want to mention it because it's a great little scene.
I don't get it. Like, I appreciate it. I like that it's here, but I can't even begin to fathom why this was filmed.
I want the Koopa special. Hold the mammal.
You like pterodactyl wings on that? Yes.
They were so proud of the lines that they just had to keep it in, and I can respect it.
But if it was just a one and done, I'd be okay with it there. But the fact that they specifically bring it up like twice more at the end of the movie means that they were extremely proud of that scene, and they needed to keep it for whatever reason through all the different cuts of this movie.
Yeah, so the Mario Brothers get to Koopa's tower, and they go looking for tools to help with their mission, and they find like some lockers that have some outfits in them, and that's it's the outfits. And what's funny is that they're not actually perfect outfits because they're not dungarees. Like, they're actually a little bit different to like what the outfit is in the game. But this is the movie's version of their outfits.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with the movie taking some liberties as well as it's still recognizable.
Yeah.
It's the same way of like Marvel superheroes. The suits are never one-to-one of what they were in the comics, but they are recognizable as to what they were supposed to be.
Yeah. And then they end up in an elevator with a bunch of Goombas and make them all dance so they don't notice
This
them.
is the part where I started questioning that I was missing things. Like, I was paying really close attention, and I was positive, but I couldn't, because of the way I watched this, I didn't have access to, like, subtitles or anything. So, when all of a sudden they're in this elevator filled with Goombas, and Luigi just starts slowly swaying them back and forth until they're all dancing with each other, I thought I missed something. Did I?
No. This is just setting up that Toad, when he plays music, all the Goombas sort of get on board. Because you see them dancing a little bit at the end as well, so I think it's just... This is the setup of that.
See, it's just that the scene lasts long enough, it didn't feel like the setup. It felt like the payoff.
Yes. Yeah, that's fair.
One scene that was around this area was Bowser going into the throne room of the old king.
You mean Koopa?
Sorry, Koopa, yes. Can we just take a moment to describe the Cronenberg horror that is the old king?
It's an anus. It's a fungus anus with this fungus ball that sort of pops in and out of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's just hovering above a throne, and Koopa just comes in. It's just like, oh, you thought you could save them or whatever, but I'm going to merge the worlds.
It is important to get Koopa's name right because Lance Henriksen's character is credited as King Bowser.
This was so frustrating to me. I cannot begin to describe the amount of just muttering to myself as I looked at the IMDb page and saw that, because it doesn't make any sense, man.
Yes. Well, at the end, when he... for some reason, killing Koopa at the end just magically makes him evolve back into a man. But the fungus becomes Lance Henriksen at the end, and he was the former king. He is Daisy's father.
Which I really want to lay out that I just accepted that. I was like, yeah, you know what? The movie needs to wrap up. And sure, it just magically turns him back into Lance Henriksen. Why not? But my girlfriend at that point, she had to stop. And she's like, no, why did he turn back? Why does him dying link to that? I'm like, don't. Just don't. It's not going to make sense from here on out.
Yeah, just cause, basically. So they get to Daisy pretty quickly, to be honest. Daisy almost gets killed.
One thing they do outside is they specifically use their plumbing skills to turn off all the heat in this building.
Yes.
And there's this whole scene where Mario is basically telling Luigi, like, oh, this is your lineage. This is an honorable profession. And Luigi's like, I don't think I want to do it.
I have nothing to add, but...
No, I really want to just lean on the fact that they never resolve this subplot. They bring it up numerous times, and it just never comes to a head.
Yeah, there's a few different scenes in the tower. I think before they get to Daisy, actually, there's the scene where Luigi jumps over this like elevator shaft or whatever it is, and he thinks he's flying for a second.
Oh yeah.
But he's actually just on a hook. But he's convinced Mario that he's flying, so Mario's about to jump, and then he realizes he's actually just on a hook. Like his belt's caught on this thing. And he's like, "No, Mario, don't jump! You're going to fall to your death." And the fungus ends up saving him.
Yep.
But and he actually bounces up and down a couple times. So I get very Mario-esque. You know, that's your.
Yeah. I don't particularly remember the scene where Mario trampolines on a mushroom off a skyscraper, but yep.
No,
I mean, from the plot point that Mario's whole thing is jumping, okay, fine. But they keep on finding all these weird excuses of like, oh, normal people don't just jump. How do we trick Bob Hoskins into jumping?
I think the problem is that he's not a young man who is naturally going to do some parkour or anything like that. So you have to sort of fit reasons into why he's going to jump into the story, I suppose. But they get to Daisy, who was almost killed by Lena, but Yoshi saved her. Lena just jealous, wanted to stab her.
That was the second time. Like she's being held by Lena and Yoshi's freaking out. I'm like, quick, Yoshi, use your tongue. And not a second later, Yoshi uses his tongue and wraps around her. And I'm like, oh my god, it's an interactive movie. That's awesome.
Luigi goes with Daisy, and they immediately run into Koopa and get taken by them. Mario, though, has found out from Daisy that his girlfriend, as well as all the other missing women from Brooklyn, are being held in like a room in the building. So he goes to help them. He's got a great line because when she says, you know, what about Daniela? Not knowing that she's here, and he just thinks he's been asked, oh, what's up with my girlfriend? He's like, shit, I was meant to take her to WrestleMania.
No, you don't know.
She was kidnapped. She's here, Mario. You might want to go to help her. So,
God, can you imagine this movie, a different cut of it, where that just never gets brought up, and they leave her in the Dino world?
I could see it, yeah. I could see it. So he goes there and he like takes out the two Goombas by he jumps down. He makes them use their like flamethrower weapon because they all have flamethrower weapons for some reason.
That's the one part I could never square.
Yeah.
Because if you're in this world where like oil and gas was never a thing, I don't understand why the default weapon is flamethrower.
It looks good, I guess.
I mean, yeah, it's menacing, and I understand in Mario he throws fireballs, but they don't. That's one of those things where they built this dinosaur world so carefully, and then they hit and fireballs, because why not?
But this is the scene that leads to the infamous mattress going down the pipe scene. So
yes.
To rescue them all from this tower, he gets them to grab one of the big mattresses, and they all get on it, and they ride down this giant pipe. And there's a bit of a chase where there's some Goombas on a mattress chasing them down the pipe, and Mario makes them flip over by putting a wrench in like a grate so that it acts like a stop, and they just kind of go wee.
Yep.
The thing, my favorite part of this though, right? You know, it's not even the sort of the upbeat kind of rock music that's playing as we're having this like, you know, almost bobsleigh-esque ride down this pipe. It's the fact that when it comes out the pipe, there's two details here that I love. One, we're on the main city street of the place, even though the tower feels like it's miles away. And two, is somehow this mattress defies all physics and flies at such a shallow angle across like the street, right? It just is going through the air, and it's like a plane coming in for a landing, like the angle it's coming in at. But it's like, it's a mad. It would just like plummet the second it comes out. No,
you have no idea how fast they were going, man. Those shots were all in slow motion. It still looked like they were going just 80 miles an hour.
But because that's the thing, like that's the real problem with it, is if it were going fast enough, I suppose it wouldn't look wrong. But they're going at this just slow pace, like gliding. You know, it's like where's the? It's like they've got a wingsuit on the mattress, like the way they're just floating down.
See, that's the issue with these sort of movies, where it's, you know, they build up all these sci-fi things that don't possibly have a chance of existing, and then they defy physics once or twice, and you're like, do I bring it up? They have all these other fantastical things. Do I even bother mentioning the slight physics issues?
I think you do, because it's more egregious, because it just looks wrong instantly. Whereas if you tell me, you know, the rules work differently here, whatever, that's fine. But even if you told me that gravity was weaker here, this would still look wrong.
Oh yeah,
you know,
I think it's just one of those like style of filmmaking things where there are certain things the audience, no matter how suspension of disbelief you get, they aren't going to be able to disbelieve.
Yeah,
and you have to keep those things solid. And one of those things is just the way that things work in the physical world. If you have something and you haven't already presupposed that it can just glide, it's got to work the way it should.
Yeah. So Lena had the rock. She was almost going to use it, but Koopa's cops got to her, and
yeah, she went over Koopa's head and just started the invasion without him.
Yeah.
Which I don't entirely understand what her plan here is, of why she thinks that would endear Koopa.
Well, she tries to. Her actually starting it comes midway through the big fight with Mario. That's not happened yet. Because before she goes and does it, she gets the Bride of Frankenstein streak through her hair because she gets electrocuted.
Right, but I'm just saying the plan of it, because if you remember, there was that point, Koopa's still sitting in the chair after he ordered his pizza, and then the cop comes on and says, "We have all the troops ready to go, sir." And he's like, "What are you talking about? We don't have the rock."
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying, yeah. She has the rock, then Koopa gets it, and then he drops it while he's fighting Mario, and then she runs off to the meteor after grabbing it and like starts the merging of the two worlds. Which
it's important to note that I think the mattress scene right after that is the delineation between Act 2 and Act 3. I think that is really where it changes.
Oh, sure. Because, you know, Mario and Koopa have a bit of a standoff. Mario releases the ba-bomb, which has a great moment from Dennis Hopper where there's a close-up in his face where he goes, ba-bomb, ba-bomb. No, ba-bomb. Not just bomb. Ba-bomb. Ba-bomb. Yes.
Okay, so to be fair, that is the second thing they got perfectly video game accurate, and I appreciate it.
By the way, this is a year before Speed. I would love an alternate cut of Speed where every time Dennis Hopper says, "There's a ba-bomb on the bus." If you go below 50 miles an hour, the ba-bomb will explode.
Every time it cuts to a visual of the bomb, it's just that little walking figure just underneath the bus.
Yeah, so there's like a running thing here throughout the entire fight where this ba-bomb's like falling down to street level, and it's because they're up in a catwalk. And there's a bit of the fight where Dennis Hopper is in like this big bucket thing that's hanging. I don't even know what it's for. It's like a watchtower thing. I don't know.
It seems like it's just transporting like a bunch of rocks or gravel or something like that. But strangely enough, this is the one time where they decided to go video game accurate, because Super Mario World, the final boss of that, is Bowser flying around over top of Mario in like a Koopa cart.
Ah, okay.
And so he's poking his head out of it and throwing down bombs and stuff like that at Mario. It's weirdly specific to Super Mario World, and yet they decided to include it here. Yeah,
in the middle of all this though, when Lena starts merging the worlds, for some reason only Mario, Koopa, and a few of his Goombas like transport to the real world. And we see in the real world, because the girlfriend Danielle and the other girls have went through, there's like press at the dig site, Scapelli's there, there's a crowd, and they're all kind of like, you know, like, what's going on? There's something weird happening. Danielle is trying to tell them there's this other world, we all went to this other dimension. And sure enough, Koopa and Mario fade in, right? They sort of disintegrate and then reform in his world. And I have a couple of questions about, before we even get to what happens there, I have one question that sticks out in my mind, is that Mario's not from that world. So even if you argue that that's why he's the first one to like transport over, then I would say, but why does he transport back then? Because he belongs to like regular Earth. So like, one way or the other, there's something off here. But why is Mario chosen, and when all these other people in the Koopa land aren't chosen to go first?
Well, see, that's a great question. So then later on,
there's no answer. It's just because we want to do this bit.
Honest to God, like that scene, I think the only reason they have that scene in the movie is that they really wanted to show the de-evolution gun working on a mammal.
Working
on a human.
Before we move any further, did you notice what the de-evolution gun was?
It was the Nintendo Super Scope.
Yes, it was. It was like a silly painted Super Scope. And looked as cheap as it should.
Oh, absolutely.
As a result of that. Yeah, so... But I'm surprised there wasn't a power glove at one point. Oh, you have to wear the power glove to like put your hand in a thing.
It's so bad.
I've not even seen that movie, but I get that reference.
Yep.
So yeah, and this is where the World Trade Center like turns into Koopa's towers, and one of them's like missing the top of it from damage, and it's like, oh, that's the part that especially does not age well.
Like, if it were other buildings in New York, it'd be a little bit more okay, because it's like, okay, just general destruction, but it's specifically the Twin Towers, and it makes it very worthy.
And so there's a lot of weird things about this scene. You know, Koopa's like laughing at the filthy mammals, and he goes to like use the de-evolution gun, and ends up hitting Scapelli, right? And he turns into, he says monkey, but he's from reptile world, so I'll forgive that he doesn't understand that this is a chimp, and a chimp's not actually a monkey, it's an ape. But what, you know, that's like, whatever. He doesn't know. He grew up in Dinosaur land. They don't have apes over there, right? But
this was before the new Planet of the Apes franchise. We weren't familiar yet.
So, but what gets me is that Scapelli's obviously this evil crime boss type dude or politician, and I get that people don't like him, but they literally cut to a shot of like Daniela and the crowd laughing when they've just seen a human being be turned into an ape. Like, that's not absolutely terrifying.
I feel like this movie is far too blasé with its Cronenberg horrors.
I know.
Because there's the moment, we skipped over it, where the brothers meet back up with Daisy, and she's in the throne room with her quote-unquote father. And she introduces them, and she's like, hey guys, I know this may seem weird, but this is my dad.
Oh, Luigi just starts, that's where they find her, and Luigi just starts saying, hey sir, it's an honor to meet you. I'm interested in your daughter. May I have her hand in marriage? He doesn't go that far, but that's the tone that he takes with him.
And,
which actually,
Mario...
that reminds me. So who shows her that throne room with her dad? It's Iggy and Spike, who decide they save her after she's just almost been assassinated. Toad's on fire from the other Goombas, right? Whole thing's happening, and they're like, hey Daisy, we have been your loyal subjects, we've always been a supporter of your father, right? Which, you know, whether or not you agree or disagree with that, whatever, I don't care. The part that bothers me is like, Daisy, you remember these two are the ones who kidnapped you, right? And you just go with them like it's nothing.
Look, Daisy's had a very traumatic past 48 hours. She's kind of just taking attachments where she can.
She doesn't even do a double take, David. She doesn't even do a double take and go, oh, I recognize these dudes.
She didn't do a double take on the fact that her father is a giant fungal beast that's taken over the city. She has some issues to work through, Pete. Her best friend, as she has managed to come here, is a velociraptor.
So anyway, Luigi and Daisy stop Lena, so the world's like demerged, so everything goes back to where it was. So. And
they did this whole thing of like Daisy was needed because of her bloodline or whatever.
She's withstand. She's the only one, because Lena basically dies because she can't she's like someone other than Thanos using the Infinity Gauntlet. Right. It'll kill her, right? Although I'm not going to lie, I actually laughed at a joke here. So she gets like basically blasted into the wall, and she's like a fossil into the wall, and Luigi just looks at her and goes, "Well, she certainly makes an imprint."
You laughed at that?
That was funny.
Okay.
That was a funny, like, come on.
I appreciated it in the moment, because otherwise it could have come off as the horror scene that it actually was.
So yeah, Mario dodges Koopa for a bit. The bomb.
He's doing this whole thing where he's pretending he has the rock by just holding his shoelace in his hand.
Yes.
Because the rock was on a necklace chain.
Yeah.
And Koopa just doesn't even question it. He's like, "Oh, give it to me."
And until the worlds start to merge, and he's like, "Wait a minute, you don't have the rock. The rock's being used."
Yep.
But ultimately, they use the de-evolution gun. He turns into like a sort of really bad CG dinosaur. He doesn't look anything like Bowser from the game. He doesn't look anything like that.
But I can see they were trying at that point, because that was supposed to be Bowser in the Koopa cart.
Yes.
Like, that was the closest they tried to attempt Koopa to be who he actually is in the games. And it didn't quite work, because the 90s CGI was not a fun time.
No. And eventually they both get the evolution guns. So Mario and Luigi hold up their super scopes and blast Koopa, which makes him melt into a liquid, and then he splats all over the floor.
Yeah. Which, to be fair, they did set up that if you de-evolve fast enough, you just become the primordial goo.
Yes. So they set it up and paid it off, is what you're saying.
That one thing. I admit to that one thing.
I mean, there was some extended logic to some of the things, like like you said, the cars and the running gags about them eating weird food because they're evolved from dinosaurs and they don't have certain things that regular Earth does. That's all fine.
There was a scene where there was a woman with a stroller and there was an egg in the stroller, and then two guys just came up like they were about to eat it, and she just starts batting them away. Stay away from my baby.
Yeah. So Luigi and Daisy have this big heartfelt goodbye because she wants to stay and find herself and get to know her father.
Can we just point out how immediately, not even 10 seconds have passed since Koopa died, the town cheers and they're already painting over his murals.
Oh, they're cheering for the Mario Brothers as if they've just freed them from like this tyranny. Sorry. Very, very quick turnaround on that front.
I like how the entire plot that on Bowser's side is like, oh, sorry, Koopa, God. Anyway, the entire plot on his side is that there's no resources. There's no water. Like, there's no food left. This entire city's about to die, and that's why they want to merge right now. But this doesn't solve that issue. This city's still going to die. It's just that the king is dead.
Yeah, maybe Daisy will open the portal and like Mario and Luigi can like throw in some supplies.
Maybe that's what the end of the movie hook is that Daisy's like, you're not going to believe it. The bourgeoisie just rose up.
So Daisy and Luigi have this goodbye. Luigi's expecting her to come back with them, and she's not going to. And she says, all things make sense. She's like, hey, I want to get to know my dad. He's back to being normal again. And I want to sort of help, rebuild this place because they've just lost their awful leader and they need to sort of like farm. Maybe I can help with that because I'm literally the princess of this place. And I couldn't fathom why it was never even suggested that Luigi could just stay here. Like, is there a reason why he needs to go back to regular Earth?
It's Mario Brothers plumbing. You got to keep the branding.
I'm just, I just, it never even comes up. Like, why can't you come here? And maybe, that's when he'd say, oh, I can't leave my brother. And fair enough, I'd accept that. But it never even comes up. It's like, no, you have to choose to come back to our Earth.
See, that could have been where they finally wrapped up that plot. They've been like, you know what? No, I'm thinking, go home and maybe finally become a plumber I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. So the ending hook of the movie, your scene that sets up a sequel. So it's actually it's funny we brought Back to the Future earlier because it's very much like Back to the Future, and you've got that one scene at the end.
Straight up.
Yeah. Where they're on the news, right? The newscasters calling them the Super Mario Brothers because they saved all these like kidnapped women and whatever. And Luigi's kind of miserable. Mario's just, flirting around with Daniela. And then the door opens and Daisy comes in looking, funnily enough, like she's just walked out of Mad Max. She's got like a gun belt on. She looks all dirty. And she's like, Mario, Luigi, I need your help. You'll never believe what's happened. And Mario just like grabs his tool belt like the superhero he is and goes, I believe it. All right. And Daisy smiles, and we go to credits as if there's some villain, something bad's happening, and they have to go help. Yep. Come back in the sequel that might one day happen.
The Mario bit at the end, I think, is supposed to be wrapping up the plot of, you just got to have faith or whatever. Yeah. You just got to believe it. So I appreciate that.
Did you know there was a competition in the magazine Nintendo Power to be an extra in the second movie? Bummer to whoever won that competition.
I'd imagine it's probably the same guy who won the competition in the same magazine for The Mask 2.
I didn't know about that one, but very good. Yep. Very good. So that's your final scene. It's just the blatant sequel bait. Aside, of course, from a little post-credit scene that...
I was wondering whether or not you would have watched this.
I only discovered that this had a post-credit scene the last time I saw it. So I went most of my life not knowing this existed.
Okay.
And it just so happened I let it play the last time I saw it until the very end and went, wait a minute, what is this? And it's this little... Because actually, this is a fair critique because it made me realize that Iggy and Spike, after they show Daisy where her father is, they just disappear from the movie.
Yeah.
They don't help with anything. They don't redeem themselves. They don't even just show up for a joke, except from this post-credit scene. They never interact with the plot again. But yeah, the joke here at the end is there's like two Japanese businessmen, and they're saying, hey, we want to make a video game based on like your adventures. And you think they're talking to the Mario Brothers, and then it cuts to the couch, and it's these two idiots. And like, yes, what shall we call it? I don't know. The Super Koopa Cousins?
And then just cut.
Yeah, that's a joke. That's your funny post-credit scene. It rhymes. I'll give it that.
It's one of those things where I imagine that, they played through some test audiences and whatnot, and they're like, oh, how did you like the Koopa Cousins in that? How do you like Spike and Iggy? And test audience were like, yeah, they're pretty good. We liked them. That's fine. And so they were relying on them really resonating with audiences of like, nah, this is your final comedic beat. We know how much you loved Spike and Iggy the whole time.
It's the sort of thing where they definitely would have been back in a sequel. If they made a sequel, Spike and Iggy would have been supporting, and there'd have been good guys the whole time probably, helping the heroes
or at the
out.
very least, they would have been just neutral, but still managing to help out.
The
brothers.
And probably maybe they were hoping if it was such a big hit that they could do a TV show, and actually call it Super Koopa Cousins and have like these two just having hijinks.
I don't think, they did a few big franchises back then, but I don't think the 90s were as franchise focused as they are today.
Oh, for sure. But I could see them doing a cartoon based on these two characters.
Oh, well, yeah, cartoon. Yeah. They already have Mario cartoons. They would have kept doing it.
What is there to say about the weirdness and like all the wacky stuff that happens by the end of this? It's kind of this weird mishmash of like an adaptation that's not really adapting things properly. So it's just using names. Some of the decisions are baffling, and it's also got some elements of it's doing some just very typical movie stuff that it kind of needs to wrap up. But it also has this weird like layer of like actual passion of like this. The people making this had a vision and they cared about it. So we get this really in-depth like city and this idea of like what this race of people are. And there's hints of the S&M, like say the foot on the shoulder, some of the outfits, Lena's outfit's definitely a little kinky. When they go to the nightclub where the dancing scene happens, not all of them, but I'd say a good like third of the audience are wearing what I would call kind of,
it's like latex rubber sort of
there's
stuff.
Latex, there's spikes, there's things like that. They're not super revealing, but there's definitely just a bit of a kink to some of it.
See, it's weird because obviously Matrix was 99, I think.
Yeah, that name.
But it's that sort of thing where I feel like the 90s didn't take latex and leather and such as heavily with kink as it was just cool,
I understand that point, but I think given some of the other things in the movie, I'm going to say it does connect to it.
Yeah, it definitely has this more adult feel to it. Like it just, if you looked at any particular frame, it would seem more adult than not. But then as soon as you start actually watching the movie, it has all these strange overtones of kid-friendly jokes and hijinks and whatnot that gives it this strange feel.
It feels like they started pre-production and making sets and designing the world probably before they had to change the script. So all of the dialogue and the antics they get into are very kid-friendly and light adventure-y, but all of the world they're surrounded by, and like the ideas that are sort of behind a lot of the design choices, like, okay, the world's going to have these things because it's really into this like type of thing, like whether it be the S&M or whether it be kind of the, like you say, the Cronenberg horror elements or whatever.
Right.
So all of the design things stuck because they'd already started working on them, and maybe it was just going to cost too much to go back and start from scratch. So you have this thing where it has the aesthetic and the look of this previous version of the movie, but the actual antics are still very kid-friendly. That said, there is the darker R-rated cut, apparently, that existed in some form. Well, I don't know if it was ever rated. Maybe technically, maybe we're just assuming
it wasn't rated.
Yeah, but, you know.
It's the unrated Mario movie.
It's the even weirder movie, possibly. Although maybe some of it makes more sense in the longer cut.
I mean, I did hear, obviously there's no visual confirmation, but I did hear that some of the deleted scenes more or less come in the beginning, and it's scenes where Koopa is chasing Daisy's mom around New York, and that's where he gets the ideas for like skyscrapers and stuff like that. And
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's just laying out a few extra things in the beginning. But that's the weird thing in this movie, is that I feel that the beginning, the first 20, 25 minutes of this movie are so superfluous. They don't matter at all, because once you go through the portal, they have to redefine the world again. The only reason that the first 20 minutes matter at all is to set up the relationships between Mario, Luigi, and Daisy. Everything else is completely... Who cares?
Which is important, and if you're doing it as alternate dimensions, you kind of have to start in the regular one before you move over to the other one. But of course, the argument for Mario is that if you're doing an adaptation, is you just set it in the Mushroom Kingdom and that's the world we're in. No?
You say that, but I actually think that the 2023 movie, and we will see as of last week, is going to start with him in more or less our dimension and go across and become the fish out of water story.
Okay, fair enough. Oh, at the very least, though, he's still going to be animated to begin with.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that would be funny if it was like a Wizard of Oz thing where it becomes animated after. Like, we actually get Chris Pratt walking around.
We get the AI CGI version of Bob Hoskins, voiced by Chris Pratt.
Oh, dude. If they've got balls, they'll have referenced this movie with a little wink, little nudge.
I could see them doing it. Illumination is usually pretty good at doing those little inside joke things.
Like,
but
let's say they go by a pizza place and there's a Koopa special on the menu.
My main concern is that Nintendo is not going to want to play ball there.
Oh, I mean, it's a sort of small little thing they might get it past them, though, without them even noticing. Because Nintendo, of course, were very, very strict about not wanting to do adaptations, because this basically ruined them. It soured them on the idea of doing adaptations of their work. So it wasn't until they could work closely, and I think obviously animated does lend itself to a Mario anyway, but I think part of the reason why it's animated is because they can sort of like have even more control and like have their claws onto it as much, because they want to control it. Not in like I don't even mean that in a bad sense. Like, I understand why they want to control it. It's their IP. They want to make something that's benefiting of them. I am a little worried, and you will find out, last week, because we've recorded this, like I said earlier, way in advance. I'm sure, it might end up feeling like a very safe movie, but at the very least, it's going to be more of a friendly adaptation of what Mario is for the masses.
Yeah, that's honestly, I feel like we're probably going to get, maybe it'll be something that bucks the formula. I doubt it. It's probably going to be pretty safe, especially for Nintendo's first outing. But I think it's going to be just basically the polar opposite of this movie, where it's going to very clearly resemble Mario as he's been established already, but it's not going to have this vision to it. It's not going to have this auteur like craziness to it. It's going to be a safe formulaic thing that we've seen already.
Yeah, but because we're in the past, and last week was when the movie came out, go back and check and see what we thought of it.
Yeah,
I'm sure it was an interesting conversation.
It was fantastically horrible. It was beautifully ugly. Whatever happened in it.
Covering all your bases there, I see. Yep, very good.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I guess we rate Super Mario Brothers 1993.
Do I have to? I mean, okay. I am trying to keep an open mind that, like I said, these characters were not super well established. The story of Mario Brothers throughout all the games is not so much a story as it is just the loose thread connecting the video game together. I understand it's not a plot-based game. That being said, with what they had already established, these directors did nothing to appeal to the IP. Did nothing to even try to resemble it. It was some passing references, but all in all, it seems like they already had a story in mind and they just molded Mario on top of it. So if I try to keep that in mind, growing up as a Nintendo kid, just thinking about the movie existing on its own, void of the Mario IP outside of it, I think I'd still have to end up giving this one a 4. It's a very confusingly done movie. The fact that they had to introduce that first scene saying like parallel dimensions, and if that's what you're using to easily explain your story needed another rewrite. Beyond that, a little bit of dodgy special effects here or there. I appreciate the practical effects where they came in, but all in all, this shouldn't have been a Mario movie at any point.
Yeah, I think I would go just a nudge higher and say 4.5 because while I say I like it and I kind of enjoy watching it, it is, it's messy, it's overstuffed with ideas, things aren't developed properly, there's no payoff to certain things that are kind of set up. I do enjoy Dennis Hopper's Koopa, and I certainly enjoy a couple of the corny jokes here or there, and I kind of enjoy the design of the world because it's kind of interesting, and I appreciate that it is weird. But it fundamentally isn't that good a movie, though, either. It's definitely messy.
Right.
That said, though, I'll take it over, like, a bland, like, bad movie.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Pick almost any Netflix original movie. Like, I'd rather watch this. So, but that said, though, 4.5. Now, as far as making the cut goes, this is an interesting...
I don't know. I think that it is... I don't think it makes the collection. That puts it at 2, 1, or a 0 in terms of cut from the collection, cut your losses, or as we've decided to finally title the 0th tier, it cuts deep.
Yes. So, I think there's enough interesting weirdness that I don't think we go with the 2 lower options. I think it at least has to be cut from the collection as far as...
I think acknowledging the fact that it has become this strange little cult film.
Yes.
Where... I think I agree that while this is not a high quality movie, it is likable in its own little strange way, that it's probably not worth having around, but it is worth at least giving a try.
Yeah. Obviously, I think if you like the movie, then absolutely get your hands on it. But I think, in general, I would say it's a cut from the collection. So that is Super Mario Brothers 1993, which leaves us with one last video game adaptation that we've got planned. It was the Patreon vote. There was 3 options. The losing options were Dead or Alive, and oh god, what was that?
I have it listed.
There you go.
Hold on. Dead or Alive and Need for Speed.
Need for Speed, yeah. Okay. I'm glad Need for Speed didn't win because we're about to do Fast and the Furious movies, so it would have been a bit too much of the same. So the winner was Uncharted, which I've not seen. I'm a big fan of the games, so this should be an interesting exercise in possible torture.
I have not seen it either, but I am also not a massive fan of the games. So
that's good. That's 2 very different, valid perspectives then to go into it with, and we'll see how we feel. But I also really don't like Mark Wahlberg, and that's another big factor. So
you just got to balance it out with the Tom Holland.
He's not good enough to balance out Mark Wahlberg.
What? No.
Sorry, just not enough. Very few are, to be honest. Like it takes a village.
I was gonna say.
So
wrap up. You did it.
Yeah, we're done. So thank you very much for joining us. Of course, you can support all the content. Get the bonus episode, which this month was Legend of Chun-Li, Street Fighter Legend of Chun-Li specifically. You can go get that at the $3 tier on Patreon, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, as well as the bonus episodes for all past months. And there's a back catalogue forming now because this is the 6th theme or something like that. But anyway, I don't know. They're building up. The $5 tier, you get access to our other bonus show on Patreon, which is Extra Reels, where we review kind of random, so bad they're good movies, or at least they hopefully are. We've not been burned yet, but, you know, there's always time to get hurt.
We'll see when we get there.
So, yeah, we've done movies like Miami Connection, Deadly Prey, Dangerous Men, stuff like that in that slot, if that sounds of interest. And, of course, there's bonus stuff for the other movie shows as well, so there's a nice back catalogue already built up for those. So, a lot of content on offer.
I think that Extra Reels for this month is probably going to be up already, which would be Gone with the Pope.
Yeah, we've not done that yet, though, so I can't tell you if it was interesting or not. I hope it was.
I try. Who was the one who suggested it? You got a suggestion for this one, right?
I think this was Tara that said do this.
Tara? Well, if it's bad, we'll blame her. If it's good, we'll take the credit.
So, yeah, support us on Patreon, or, of course, you can do some simple things as well for free, like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, or rate the podcast 5 stars on your podcast app of choice. Yeah, iTunes been the most common one. Also, I will take this time to thank our Patreon producers just before we completely wrap up. So thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, Board Now, Christopher Moy, David Brown, and Al Treisman. Thank you to you all. That is the show. We will see you next time for Uncharted, and then beyond that, we do the first half of the Fast and the Furious franchise. So,
it's about family.
It's about misery is what it's about. I'm not a fan. I'm certainly not a fan of the early ones anyway, so we'll see how that goes. But thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching movies. And, Monkey!